I am Bogdan Dumitriu, and I'm the policy officer in charge of the building block in Digit. I will be hosting you today in the first hour, after which our plan is to have 7 speakers that will be sharing testimonials of the use of eDelivery and the benefits of using eDelivery in a number of other projects, which we hope you will find interesting. And depending on how the timing allows us, we will have a shorter or a longer Q&A session. So with that, let's get started. I want to start today by doing a little bit of expectation management, mostly because, well, we are very, very happy to see that this is so far the webinar with the highest number of registered participants. So we have over 100 people who registered for the webinar. And since certainly you all saw that, we collect what people expect from this webinar. And we have looked through the expectations, and I think it's important to set the scene correctly from the beginning so that people do not have the wrong idea about the topic of the webinar. So first and foremost, this is a webinar that we plan to have as a non-technical webinar. This is very important because a lot of the questions and the expectations we saw had to do with various technical notions about setting up eDelivery, installing eDelivery, configuring eDelivery, and so on. This is not a webinar where we will be getting into technical discussions. Essentially all of the webinars we've done until now have been technical or have had a strong technical aspect to them. Today's webinar is not among them. It is meant for non-technical, or in any case, an audience that is looking for at eDelivery from a business perspective, not from a technical perspective, which is why if you would like to get technical information, there are other channels, other moments and other ways, and we are of course available to have such discussions separately from this webinar. For now, my colleagues will be pasting in the chat a few links to recordings of more technical webinars that might already answer some of your questions. Please have a look at them, and I'm sure that at least for some of you, you will find the answers that you are looking for there in those webinars. Furthermore, if you have topics that you would like to be covered in our webinars and they have not been either in an old webinar or in today's webinar, we also have a running EU survey that you will receive a link to as well, where we are collecting exactly this type of suggestions or of interest, because of course we cannot have bilateral meetings with each and every one of you. That's not possible for us as a small team, but we want to see what people are mainly interested in and try to organize webinars based on your feedback rather than our own, let's say, planning. Lastly, we also have a lot of you that mentioned that they would like some specific guidance or clarifications about the use of eDelivery in a specific project. A lot of you come from the FT Exchange Environment project. Some I see are interested in the European Maritime Single Window Environment project. Some in the once only technical system and the upcoming projectathon on that project, and so on and so forth. PEPL as well. So we would like to say that we will not be addressing project specific questions or providing project specific information in this webinar. The goal is to present eDelivery in a way that is business agnostic. eDelivery itself is business agnostic, and in this webinar we will not be addressing, let's say, at least during the first hour, questions specific to one project or another. Of course, during the testimonials, colleagues who are working in the once only technical system, in the FT environment project, and in many other projects that you are here may be interested in, will have short introductions of the project and of the use of eDelivery and the value of eDelivery in those projects. However, during the first hour, we will not be addressing project-specific items. As you will see, we will be discussing many of these projects as examples, but not necessarily providing maybe the detailed information you might be looking for. For that purpose, what I invite you to do is to get in touch with the business owners, with the policy owners that you are certainly in touch with for those specific projects, and we are always open to their requests to organize dedicated webinars, where together with them we can try to answer very specific questions to a project. As an example, we will be, of course, supporting the once only technical system projectathon in October, in a few weeks. So in a similar way, we can be supporting any of the other projects if we are invited to do so. So with this, I will move to the main topic of the presentation, and hopefully some of you might still find in the information you would like to see in this webinar. I wanted to get us started with a little bit of policy view regarding the eDelivery building block, where it's coming from and where it's headed to. Because I think while, of course, we can discuss how do you use the building block, how can you benefit from the building block, how can you use it in a specific setting, it's very important that you also have the high-level policy view so that you can know how, to what extent and for what period of time you can rely on the building block, and what is the future of the building block as we see it today. First of all, though, where are we coming from? So I think some of you are already familiar with the fact that starting in 2010, perhaps even 2008, 2009, there were several large-scale pilots in different sectors such as health, e-justice, invoicing, and so on, where building blocks such as eDelivery were introduced, were let's say used in those pilots, and then towards 2016, well, during 2014, 2016, a number of these building blocks were selected by member states and handed over to the Commission as part of the eSense project, in order for the Commission to take them, let's say, from a piloting status to production status, and to ensure long-term sustainability. This has been happening since 2014, initially under the Connecting Europe Facility program, and today under the Digital Europe program. These are both 7-year multi-year programs of the European Union that have been ensuring funding for the eDelivery and other building blocks like it. Of course, during this period, and even before having been taken over by the Commission, several what we call today digital ecosystems have already started using the building blocks, and some of them have been doing so successfully for many years now, and many more are now on the path of preparing to launch into production with building blocks at their core. From a policy angle, at the moment, we are supported by the Digital Europe program, Work Program 23-24, where funding for the building block is already ensured. And this way, with the support from DG Connect, we can provide you as a community with, well, relatively wide range of services and software products, some of which you will learn about today. And of course, if you are already familiar with the building block, then you already know what they are. And then as of 2025 onward, the policy life cycle will start, of course, discussions between the European Commission and the member states to decide on the policy objectives and, of course, allocate funding accordingly. So this is why, or is one of the reasons why we want you as our audience to be well informed about the value of the building block to your existing and future projects. Because, well, we certainly know that being a building block, not a very visible, let's say, element of your systems, and well, in our understanding, by just working, you know, the system simply works under the radar. For many of the stakeholders, it can be quite invisible, which is also good because it means, well, it does the job it has to do, and nobody has to be too concerned about it. But it also means there is a small risk because of this invisibility that, let's say, high-level decision makers are not always or do not always have the building blocks that support their systems at the forefront of their, let's say, interest. So I think this is very important that if you know, the costs, you know, if we help you save effort, save costs, save time, and you see this value, and you see that we provide something valuable, then I think it's also important to know that this is funded from a European program, and this funding, of course, needs to continue, which we certainly expect it will, in order for us to continue to provide the services we are providing today. So with this, I want us to start with somewhat of an analogy, because I think, and this is, since this is a webinar in principle meant for an audience that is just coming to eDelivery, or that is not very familiar with eDelivery, even if they've had, if there was some exposure to it in the past, we see in many of the exchanges we have that a lot of people are confused about what eDelivery is on very many dimensions. So we call ourselves a building block, and then of course this gives rise to different interpretations in the minds of people. Then it's a relatively technical service offering, which makes it quite hard to understand what is in scope, what is out of scope, and how exactly do you engage with this particular building block in order to take, like, let's say, advantage of its service offering. And we thought that the easiest way to go about this is initially by making an analogy, which of course, if you're already very knowledgeable about the building block, will be quite evident. But if not, we think it's quite helpful with, let's say, the airline travel system. And in particular, we are focusing on the airport. So I think with this in mind, we tried to outline a number of the elements that come into play that you're certainly all familiar with when traveling by plane, and explaining a little bit the delivery in terms of I apologize, in terms of these elements that come to play when you're traveling by plane. So first of all, you have the airport where you go to board a plane, and the equivalent in this analogy to an airport is what we call an eDelivery access point. So if you look at the purpose of an airport, and if you've heard the notion of an eDelivery access point, which is of course a software version, that's not a physical embodiment as an airport is, then you can more or less see an eDelivery access point fulfilling the function of an airport. I will explain why by continuing with the other notions, and hopefully this will give you a very clear feeling of what an eDelivery access point's role is. So what happens at an airport is typically that people come to board the plane in order to fly from one, let's say, destination to another. And typically the people boarding the planes are passengers, sometimes without luggage or with very little luggage, sometimes with large luggage. And the passengers and the luggage are not intrinsic to the airport system. They come from the outside, and then they simply have to follow some procedures in order to get on a plane. So this is why the passengers and luggage, you can see them as what we call a business payload. So typically this is a main document. It could be a form, it could be a request, it could be something else, and sometimes also attachments. So in much the same way as a passenger and the luggage are completely free form, the payload that can be transported by eDelivery following the certain rules is equally free form. So you decide what the payload is, how big it is, and what its form takes. Of course, there are some limitations, as with any real system, but still it's very, very open-ended and flexible. Then, as you know, when you check in, you get a boarding card, and if you have luggage, there are some labels that are attached to the luggage, which help the airline travel system know where to take you from and where to take you to, and also where to take your luggage from and where to take it to. So much in the same way, we have what we call eDelivery AS4 metadata. This is essentially information about the destination and about the place from where the payload starts, and some additional information that helps the system ensure that the data is transported to where it needs to get. This is part of a package that is equivalent, let's say, to what happens when you do the check-in and the boarding procedure. Because when you do the check-in and the boarding procedure, in addition to let's say, receiving this metadata, there is a further amount of standardized, let's say, processing of the passenger and luggage that needs to take place in order for someone to board the plane. So in much the same way that the airport fulfills, let's say, this procedure, an eDelivery access point will do a similar thing with the business payload in order to turn it from a, let's say, vague shape that it may have to a very standardized way of travel, attaching, of course, the metadata to it in the process. So I think this is where you can see the model already of eDelivery appearing. We take something which has a shape that can be relatively flexible, and we put it in a shape that is relatively standardized in order to transport it. Then if you think about the airplane itself, this is where we are putting all the passengers and the luggage. This is practically relatively analogous to an eDelivery AS4 message containing an envelope. This is the packaging and the original payload. Here the analogy breaks down a little bit because usually an airplane will include a lot of passengers with their respective luggage, whereas an eDelivery AS4 message only includes a single, let's say, passenger and its luggage. But for the sake of analogy, I think it still works, even if it's a little bit different here. Then we come to the purpose and the sequence of travel. So what do we mean by this? We have people who are boarding a plane in order to go on holiday, to visit family, to work, to travel for business, or any other number of reasons. Much in the same way, an eDelivery access point can be used either to transport something in the area of health, something in the area of logistics, something in the area of taxation or customs, something in the area of justice, etc., etc. So the eDelivery, just like an airport, does not dictate why are you flying, or in the eDelivery case, why are you sending messages. So this is completely open-ended, and it is the responsibility of the system integrators to decide in each and every case what should be the payload and in what sequence should this payload be exchanged between eDelivery access points, or in the case of the passengers, if you have a business trip, you may fly from one airport to another airport and then not come back to the original one, but maybe travel to a third one. Whereas if you're flying for tourism, oftentimes you will just have a return ticket. So you go from one airport to the destination one, and then you come back. So of course, in many of the business exchanges through eDelivery, the same happens. It is the same two access points. But still, as the network of airports is really, has hundreds of nodes of airports, much in the same way, the eDelivery network has hundreds of eDelivery access points. And even if a specific passenger, a specific message flies from one clear airport to another one in the network, another passenger could fly between two completely different airports. So it is very much the same with the eDelivery exchanges. You look at it often to understand the model in a bilateral way, one source airport and one destination airport. But the network practically can replicate this model, this bilateral model, much in the same way as the airport network can do. And finally, if you think about the airport arrival and departure infrastructure, and by this I mean that you can have taxis, trains, buses, metros, even walking to the airport. So essentially, the airport does not really dictate how a passenger arrives at the airport. The passenger is free to use whatever mode of transportation it wishes to get to the airport. In much the same way, if you have your business payload, it is created in a separate system that has nothing to do with the delivery, and then the way it arrives to the airport is not really dictated by the airline travel rules. Just like in this case, if you have to transfer data to and out of an eDelivery access point, each and every access point may have its own rules, which need not be identical to the other access points. So to one airport, you may only travel by taxi, whereas to another airport, you may be able to travel by train. It's the same with access points. Even if between two access points, the airline flies in a standardized way. Coming and leaving, coming to an airport and leaving the airport is essentially open-ended. So in that sense, we have different products that you can use to create eDelivery access points for airports. Depending on the product, you will have different ways to transfer data from and to your business IT system to the eDelivery access point. So this is more or less the end of the analogy. I think I wanted to spend quite some time here because already if the only thing you take from this webinar is this analogy, it will already help answer essentially every question you may ask yourself even after the webinar with respect of what is in scope, what is addressed by eDelivery, and what is out of scope of eDelivery, what is essentially for you as system integrators, as service providers, as what have you, to create in order to, of course, based on eDelivery, have an end-to-end IT system that can be used for a specific purpose. So to make it a bit more concrete now, we have here a yellow, let's say, circle or square on the right, where we show what is covered by eDelivery, at least in a technical sense, and what is left open for, let's say, integration in a specific ecosystem. So what we cover is the message exchange model. This is practically how do the planes fly from one airport to the other, what is the, let's say, the network of airports and so on. How do you discover, let's say, participants? So essentially, if you need to send a message from one eDelivery node to another one, how do you know which node to send it to? And then, of course, what kind of security procedures are used when transporting this data from one access point to the other. What is not in scope, what is practically to be defined during integration, is on the one hand, over what type of network would this connection between access points be established? Is it the internet? Is it, for instance, the TESTA network, which already interconnects in a secure way public administrations? Is it a VPN? So any of these, let's call them network supports, is perfectly viable as support for establishing an eDelivery network over. Then on the other side of the story, as I already tried to explain, the payload and the data exchange agreements, so what do we transport and in what sequence, are for each domain to define. And also, if we are talking about end-to-end encryption, this is equally something that is not provided by eDelivery, not end-to-end. So eDelivery provides encryption, but it only provides encryptions between airports. So whatever, I stay with the analogy because I think it can be helpful to keep, let's say, going through the presentation. Whatever happens outside of airports, it's not the domain of eDelivery, and therefore, by definition, end-to-end encryption would start before the airport. So we cannot ensure it as given the limited scope of the eDelivery network. Nevertheless, of course, in between airports, encryption is there. So the second dimension I wanted to spend some time on when explaining what is in scope and what is out of scope of eDelivery was the dimension of the service perspective rather than the technical perspective. So far I've been talking about the conceptual model, the architecture, and so on. But here, a very common confusion is that people unfamiliar with eDelivery expect that we provide a single network that you can simply tap into, and then you have your exchange network ready to be used. The building block is a very small operation, so to speak, with a very small budget. So this type of service offering is clearly not in our mandate and not in our ability to provide. We provide the specifications, we provide sample software, consultancy services, and stakeholder management services to make sure you can understand how to use the specifications, the software, and the technical services we provide. But we definitely and absolutely do not provide a network. We do not operate a network. So every time you are discussing about using eDelivery, the first thing that has to come to mind is that either you have to select an existing network, which we are not going to be the ones offering. This could be maybe a project that already you are part of, which is using eDelivery, whose network could be reused. Or you can also imagine that the network will have to be built. So then participants in an ecosystem would have to deploy eDelivery access points and configure them in order to create such a network that can then be used inside the ecosystem. Equally, we are not providing eDelivery access points as a service to, let's say, integrate a network as an end or back-end IT system. There are some service providers inside the institutions that we will mention a bit later. But again, as a building block, we neither run a network nor do we run individual access points that are part of networks. So this is always in the remit of the concrete business projects, such as one solely technical system, such as the FT exchange environment, such as the import control system, etc., etc. So every ecosystem will have its own topology of an eDelivery network, with access points being deployed by different actors in that domain. Likewise, and I come back now to the airport analogy, we do not cover at all the backend systems that typically the natural persons, the users, use in order to exchange information. So if we are talking about eDelivery, we provide software that is not destined to be used directly by end users. So you cannot install the software and simply give access to an end user, and then they can start doing some message exchanges. eDelivery access points are much like other middleware products. They are meant to be integrated by machine-to-machine, system-to-system interfacing with other IT systems. Typically, these are IT systems that already exist. So you have, let's say we take two different organizations, they have their IT systems already in place for a number of business workflows. And if they need to establish an eDelivery mediated exchange between the two organizations, between their IT systems, then those very IT systems would be connected to the two access points, one on each side. And then the access points will mediate the communication, but they will not be providing the solution for the end user. So this is the most technical we will get in this presentation, and actually I will not explain a lot here. You can see a little bit if you are more technically inclined, the kind of a hint of an architecture with the backend systems at the top and the eDelivery access points in the middle, and the network, the internet at the bottom. But what I want to focus on is not the architectural model as much as to make you visualize a little bit more concretely the message exchange that can take place through eDelivery. So here we take a very abstract example where we have two organizations that have to communicate. One organization has to send an information request. So organization A, in this case, must send an information request to organization B. And this will travel through the sender's access point, through the internet, arrive at the recipient's access point, and be delivered eventually to the backend system where it can be consumed by the intended recipient. Now, what happens when well, this is a request for information, then there has to be a reply with the requested information, presumably. So what happens then is that you see the roles are now switched. Who was the sender before becomes who was the receiver before, sorry, now becomes the sender. So it means that the information is prepared and sent back in much the same way, where the rows of the same access points that were used for the reverse direction are now exchanged. So each access point is essentially able to both send and receive data, pretty much like an email client. You can use it either to send your email or to receive your email, depending on the direction of the transaction that has to take place. And with this, I move to where I wanted to spend quite some time as well, which is to show a little bit the value proposition of eDelivery through the lens of some of the digital ecosystems already in place or being prepared that are using or will be using eDelivery. This is not; these are not all the systems that are using eDelivery. We have some 40 in total, but we selected, let's say, a significant part of them to discuss a little bit here. So I will not go through each and every one of them. You will hear actually testimonials for some of them, but I will still explain a few notions about one or the other in order to highlight some of the, let's say, benefits that you can obtain by using eDelivery. So first and foremost, eDelivery proposes a standardized protocol based on open standards. So we are not a standardization body ourselves. Therefore, a standard has been selected. If you remember the history, in fact, it was not even us who selected the standard in the Commission. This was selected in the large-scale pilots by the member states themselves. But of course, we are then taking that standard and making it a bit more concrete for use, all the while not completely tying it down, because there is still some amount of flexibility that is left, because different sectors, different business domains may need to use the standard in slightly different ways. I am taking here just a few examples of projects. Let's say if I refer to ICS2, this is a system through which economic operators must enter their entry summary declaration when they bring goods into the EU. We will have a testimonial about this later, so you will certainly learn about a lot more. But the specificity here is that the receiving organization is, of course, a public authority, whereas the sending organizations are various economic operators and or service providers through which the economic operators are interacting. So this is the same model that essentially you have in many of the other examples I have here, whether we are talking about EUDAMED for reporting medical devices, or EPREL for energy labeling, or EU-SEG for tobacco reporting. So it's always the case that or at least for most of the systems on this slide, that you have a central authority operating a system based on a certain standard, and then a wide range of private sector organizations that have to interact with the public authority through that standard. And here the standardized approach is very welcome, because this means that all of these private organizations can rely on an existing standard. They do not have to learn let's say the specific custom API that could otherwise be defined by each and every one of these public authorities. Instead, they can simply use a known standard for which service providers in the market already exist, and for which, let's say, there is a lot of knowledge available in terms of let's say, having access to resources, rather than taking a custom API and just using that. So we also have slightly different cases with the FT exchange environment, NSOG, which is the transport system operators for gas that are equally using eDelivery, or PEPL, which is of course one of the largest users of eDelivery, using it for e-invoicing. So in all of these other three cases, we don't have a single public authority. We may have a number of public authorities, or even in the case of NSOG, we are only talking about private organizations, but where there is a lot of heterogeneity in the participants to an exchange network, and it's very beneficial to be able to define this exchange on a standardized protocol, based on a standardized protocol, rather than having something custom. And this moves me right away to my next slide, which has to do with interoperability. Why do I make the link between what I was just talking about and interoperability? This is because once there is an initial network that is created based on a given standard, then let's say there is a very good return on investment, because the moment there is a new business workflow that needs to be established with the same or a part of the same actors that have to be party to the exchange, the existing network can simply be reused. There is no need, if you already have a network. And again, I make the point that we are not providing a network, but if you are operating in a fixed domain where initially you create an eDelivery network for a specific business workflow, but then this network is already there, then this can be leveraged very easily to add the second and the third and the fifth and the 10th workflow. A very good example for this is what you see at the bottom with the e-Codex system, which is active in the area of e-justice, where initially there were some pilots in the area of civil law, where there was the possibility to send and receive communication from courts in cases like small claims or your European public payment order and so on. So let's say relatively small civil cases. But then the system is now focusing also on exchange of criminal data, where there is exchange between prosecution offices that is based on eDelivery. And there is also an effort on the side of the Commission to increase the digitalization in the area of justice, where the same eDelivery network, which is part of eCodex, will be used then for some 70 judicial procedures. So you see, it starts very small. You have 1 or 2 business workflows. In this case, the workflows are judicial procedures, and then it can grow to 3 to 5, and even in this case to 70. I think there is a deadline by 2030 to digitalize these 70 judicial workflows. And of course, this is just an example. We can look at other systems with completely different actors and types of business workflows. But the story is the same. You always have interoperability inside a single ecosystem, both with a standard API and with a custom one. But the moment you want to create cross-sector, cross-domain, cross-ecosystem interoperability, then everybody is a bit siloed by their choice of exchange protocol. Whereas building with the same and with a standardized one, this is much less of a problem. Of course, you still have to make adaptations at a higher level, but at least you no longer have to reinvent the wheel as far as message exchange is concerned. Moving on, we also have the notion or the benefit of security, accountability, and reliability by using eDelivery. So we have, of course, built-in secure exchange of data with encryption, with digital signatures, with modern algorithms that are coming in our new revision of our specifications. We also ensure reliability because there is a built-in mechanism for retrying sending a message if it fails for any reason. And finally, accountability and legal assurance, non-repudiation of receipts through the fact that the protocol allows you to receive something similar to the acknowledgement when you send a registered letter. So in the paper world, when you send a registered letter, of course, you can request and receive an acknowledgement of receipt, much in the same way. eDelivery has this built in. So if you are a sender of data that has to be confirmed as having arrived, for instance, I come back here to the judicial sector, where, of course, if you submit a claim to a court, you absolutely need to have confirmation that this claim has been received and accepted by the court. So this is built into the eDelivery exchange. Similarly, in the reverse direction, when the court sends you back a reply, there is an acknowledgement of receipt that is mediated. Then, of course, we shouldn't forget scalability, because digital exchange ecosystems can start small, but they tend to grow quite large. And one approach, one protocol, one topology could be well fit to a small network, but it may not work so well when the network grows. And I think here the design of eDelivery makes it such that it can support equally or much in the same way both small networks with a small number of participants, equally so big networks with bigger number of participants. There are different specifications, different technologies available. You can see some of them in our other webinars, but at least for the purpose of this one, this is important to note. And not only are we talking about the size of the network, but also we have to look at the segregation which eDelivery allows. So it's not just the eDelivery network itself that can be scaled up because of the design of the building block. It's also the fact that you can create a federation where it's not necessary for each participant. If you have thousands or tens of thousands of participants, of course, you will not have as many access points. You will typically have some 30 to 40 or to 100 maybe access points serving these 10,000 or 50,000 participants. But the benefit of using a technology like eDelivery, which a little bit separates the concerns, is that you have to establish trust inside the network of access points, and this does not take into account each and every user that may have behind the scenes access to one or the other of the access points. You can leave that or delegate that to the IT backends which are behind an access point, and between or among the access points, the trust model is relatively straightforward, and there is no need to, let's say, if you have users in Poland and users in Portugal, there is no need for the Portuguese businesses and users to know each and every Polish business and user. The Portuguese access point needs to trust and know the Polish one, and vice versa, but then the users behind each access point respectively can simply be managed at the local level. There is no need to have it spread in the entire network. So these are all features that you can benefit from by using a protocol like the one selected for eDelivery. I already discussed quite widely the fact that eDelivery is payload and business agnostic. Obviously, this is relevant to each and every ecosystem implementing eDelivery or relying on eDelivery, because everyone has their own payload and their own business workflows. So it goes without saying that if eDelivery can support such a diverse, let's say, type of business workflows, certainly can support yours as well, because it's I think in more than adequate proof that it is completely flexible in terms of what it can support. Another interesting aspect which you can consider when looking at eDelivery as a solution is that it's relying on asynchronous messaging. This is similar to email. So in email, everything is asynchronous. You send the message and then you may receive a reply right away if the other side replies instantaneously, or you can receive a reply much later in hours or days later. In the same way, eDelivery is built on a similar concept. It doesn't mean that you cannot have, from the point of view of the end user, instantaneous request response type transactions, but it does mean that if you are in a business domain where producing the reply may take some hours or some days, imagine if you still have paper archives or what have you, or the information is simply not at hand for the system receiving the request, well, by design, the protocol does not expect an instantaneous reply. So if you can provide one, it can be managed and appear on the screen of the user that made the information request right away within some milliseconds, let's say, for the back and forth traffic to take place. Whereas if you have a model or a workflow where this is not possible, eDelivery will not block you from let's say, implementing a workflow which has gaps of days or hours between the request and the response. And I think this is clearly a situation that we see in many of the systems that use eDelivery. Finally, it's also a mature solution. So as you see, there are some 40 projects that are already using eDelivery, many of them already in production. So you can rest assured that the specifications have been validated. The software is, let's say, at a level of maturity that it can already deal with a lot of special cases and feature requests and so on. So this is a benefit that I think should be self-evident. If instead of building something new, you take something which is already there for some time and is being used, and let's say bugs are reported and let's say features are requested and implemented, you will already start from a very let's say high level of ability, rather than building something from scratch and then having to build many of the same capabilities, perhaps not all, but certainly many of them, which are typical to any message exchange approach. Given the time, I will skip through a couple of these other ones. Of course, I cannot not stop for a second on cost efficiency. We are there, we provide services, we provide specifications. We have a team that is funded from public funding at the moment, and you can benefit from the work of this team and the products built over 10 years plus of efforts. So I think it's self-evident that by using something at that level of development and maturity, not having to redo it yourselves, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money, and clearly saves a lot of effort. We also have a few examples of incipient or already existing deployments of eDelivery building block at the national level. So everything we've been discussing so far was in a cross-border European environment. Here we turn briefly to the national level, and we already have a use in the Supreme Court in Slovenia that is using eDelivery to send communication to the parties in a trial. We also have in Sweden the Agency for Digital Government, which prepared a framework based on eDelivery that will mediate essentially any number of business exchanges in the country. This is early days, but they have quite some big ambitions that already the eDelivery transport infrastructure is in place for, and now they are already discussing with all the ministries to start using the infrastructure. We have the digital post projects in Denmark and Croatia that we know of, and certainly there might be additional ones which are in the making, where already this is in production. The eDelivery is used to deliver digital mail to its intended recipient. We have pilots like EUPLE that we have also interacted with that demonstrated the use of eDelivery in the area of logistics for a number of purposes. And I think this is a bit of a precursor to what will be built in the FT exchange environment potentially. And so on and so forth. So we have a few national initiatives that we are already familiar with. And we know from informal exchanges that actually many more are present, but we at the moment don't have a full picture. This is to say that once member states typically have seen the value of using eDelivery in a cross-border project, they very quickly see the value of replicating this model also at the national level and interconnecting municipalities, regions, and the central administration, and of course opening different avenues for the various requirements that they have with regard to the public sector. I don't want to stop before also mentioning the fact that eDelivery creates a business opportunity for service providers. We are going to have testimonials from EUSend and EPSend, which are already existing. They have been set up in the European institutions, EUSend in the European Commission and EPSend in the European Parliament. And the interest here is that if you are coming from the private sector and you would like to provide eDelivery based services to either private or public organizations, we clearly see that there is a market for this, because when participating in an eDelivery network, there is often the interest of having access points as a service. And by creating a service offering, providing access points as a service as part of one or multiple digital exchange ecosystems, I think that the market is there to access these services. So we will see a little bit more from our presentations and testimonials, but we just wanted to highlight that it's not just an interesting building block for the end users, for the business owners of digital ecosystems, but equally so for potential service providers that would like to be active in this area. I will spend a very short amount of time here to say a final or to make a final point regarding how do we deal with the fact that eDelivery is first and foremost a set of specifications, and we want there to be a wide range of vendors, open source and commercial, public and private alike, that implement these specifications, and not only that implement them, but that can receive the guarantee that their implementations are conformant to the specifications. We have here what is called the conformance testing service. This is a service similar to, well, similar in business terms, not in technical terms, to the Euro NCAP system that certainly many of you are familiar with. This one, of course, for testing the security of vehicles. We also have a standard set of tests that we run on any implementation of eDelivery specifications, and depending on the results of the test, we offer a binary assessment whether the product is fully conformant or not conformant with the eDelivery specifications. This is a service we are extending this year and the next year, so we hope to, let's say, increase the level of maturity. It's already there for many years, and we have 33 products that you see in the next slide that have already passed through this conformance testing service. Now we want to tighten, let's say, the set of tests we are doing a bit more, and to say, well, if you have passed the conformance testing, then there is a very, very high level of confidence that there should not be any issues when exchanging data with other eDelivery access points. With this, I will just highlight that if you will certainly see the slides published on our website, and you can come back to the slides to see our full service offering on this slide, then links to our Twitter account, newsletter subscription, and a video archive on this slide. And finally, our upcoming events and participation in events for the rest of 2023. So all 3 slides, I invite you to consult them and to use the links in order to get more information. With this, I will thank everyone for your attention and quickly pass to the testimonials. Because I have run a little bit over time, and I want to make sure that we and you have the chance to hear from our business users and also listen to their perspective, not just the perspective of us, let's say, who are the maintainers of the building block. I will invite, first of all, our colleague from the European Parliament, Libor Bohak. He is head of unit of a business unit that is already using eDelivery through a service provider of the European Parliament called EPSend, and he will share with you a small presentation of the system that is using eDelivery and then the benefits that he was able to see by using eDelivery. Libor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bogdan. I hope that you can all hear me well.
Yes, certainly.
That's good. You're nodding. That's great. I have been asked to tell you briefly about how we profit actually from eDelivery, and I have created a very short presentation which I hope I can share. My business is reception of documents from other institutions they're processing within the European Parliament, and then delivering those documents to the different political structures in the European Parliament that would need to deal with those documents. Just to imagine what I'm talking about, because this sounds probably quite cryptic, typically these would be, for example, legislative proposals that are coming from the Commission that would need to come to us in Parliament. We need to register them in the different internal systems that we have, and then decide which parliamentary committee should be and would be responsible for that legislative proposal. It can be quite a high number of documents. We are talking about dozens of documents per day, and we of course need a solution which is reliable and which works, and which also helps us to process the documents in as much as possible automated way, at least when it comes to the actual reception and registration. Parliament has been here now for several decades, so you can imagine that of course eDelivery has not been there since the beginning. We started of course with printed documents, then eventually with the onset of internet we moved to emails, and then eventually to more sophisticated data transmission systems. And some time ago, I think this would be probably more than 10 years ago, the Commission developed a transport, if I can call it that way, document transport mechanism called eTrustX, which was very Commission-centered, and which enabled the Commission then to send in a fairly easy and structured way the documents to more than 80 clients that they have for the transmission of these official documents, so legislative procedure, strategy documents, etc. And these documents are being sent with accompanying metadata, which is interinstitutionally defined, respecting the IMMC protocol, and they are then sent from the Commission to the different clients. Now, when I say clients, I mean institutions like the European Parliament Council, but also national parliaments, other EU bodies, ministries, government offices, etc. And of course, the level of sophistication at the reception end is different. So there are clients who have built their own IT tools, IT client tools, and have embedded them into their business processes. There are others who are just using a simple client provided by the Commission, and then they open it directly there, download the documents manually, and then use them in whichever way they seem fit. The European Parliament was directly connected, technically directly connected to the Commission, so there was a direct line between the two, and we depended very much on the Commission itself when it came to and this was run by the SecGen in the Commission. So we depended very much on them also in terms of the technical administration of the system. Now, this was not such a long time ago replaced by eDelivery. EP set up its own access point, which is called EP-Send, and now all the internal clients can be connected and are connected to that internal node access point, EP-Send, which acts as one access point within the eDelivery. At the Commission end, there is a sending client, which is also embedded in their business process, which is the Decide system. And on our end, our receiving client is called epigraph. This is just a small screenshot of our client application, and that client application is then connected to the EP node. And as I explained, we receive different types of documents that come with the metadata, and that metadata then enables us to decipher semi-automatically what these documents are, the different identifiers, etc., and then inject them in a very quick and simple process into our own internal IT tools that need to register the data, save the documents, manipulate the documents in whichever way we need to, etc. And we always have a feedback also, or we provide the feedback to the Commission that we have received documents. If there is a technical problem, then the Commission also receives a feedback, and they know that we could not receive those documents, and then they can resend them again if needs be. So this works really very well. We have meanwhile extended the use not only to the line Commission Parliament, but also to the line Council and Parliament. So now we have the same document transfer using eDelivery also between Council and the EP. And we would like to eventually extend this also to other institution bodies, and in particular also become a sender. So for the time being, our business processes are designed in a way that is using eDelivery only for receiving documents, but in the future we would like to use eDelivery also for sending documents also to Commission, Council, Publications Office, and other institutions and bodies. So it's only actually a question of the right client developing the business workflow and developing further the clients, so that we can then use also this other way, sending and not just receiving. All the infrastructure is already there, so it can be reused in a very simple and easy way. And this is what is eventually the benefit of eDelivery for us, that the infrastructure can be reused in different ways. For the time being, it's used mainly for this, but if eventually EP decides to use it also in a different way, it will be a very simple process. There will not be any need to set up any new transfer mechanisms, protocols, etc. eDelivery will be there for that. So that is our very positive experience with eDelivery, and I hope that it will continue in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well, Libor, and we will be moving then to the next testimonial. Next will be our colleague Vincent Dijkstra. He's a colleague from Digit, and he will be speaking about a number of systems that were developed in Digit in order to, or based on eDelivery. So Vincent, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bogdan. Yeah, I want to give you a little bit an introduction in some of the lessons learned. I will keep it very short because the time doesn't permit us to go in the full detail. But I think it's good with the experience that we have in Digit, where I personally worked on 5 different projects that the Commission implemented with authorities in the member states, that I share you a little bit what are the typical issues that coming up in this context when it comes down to e-delivery. Yeah. Now, before we look at the lessons learned, I also want to discuss with you quickly the value of the e-delivery as a solution that we are making use of. If you ask me in the context of the different projects, BRIS, Boris, the Maritime Single Window, there's also some other engagement that I have of e-delivery, I think it comes down to the standard. There is a standard that allows an e-delivery compliant component to exchange information. And that for me is the value that we see coming back in every project, because we are never discussing how this is working. We take e-delivery due to the standard how it is, and rather than discussing how we need to do the P mode or what kind of signal messages are being sent, we immediately start focusing on the next important thing, and that is the solution. Because finally, it's not about e-delivery, it's about the solution. Maybe someone put the next slide for that. Yeah, so what we need to do in the end is the solution, and e-delivery is a component that helps us in building this, but it's just a component in there. And the beauty of it is that it takes care of part of the solution, and that allows us to basically avoid discussing how this works. So the key thing, and I think all of us need to be aware of it, it's not about e-delivery. It's about the solution that we need to put in place. And as such, I will tell you, or I will highlight you, a number of aspects that are always coming back when we're trying to put a solution in place where authorities between member states, between Commission and member states, it doesn't matter, try to exchange some form of information, a payload, whatever that might be. And I think when we're looking at that, please move to the next slide, we will see that this is always about a business process. Yeah, because in the end, what we are building on top of e-delivery is the support for a business process. And here it starts. It can be an extremely simple process, a process whereby we're just sending some information, and basically that information upon the reception by the other corner in an e-delivery type of context simply replies to it. It can be a confirmation that the message was received, or it can be an answer. So very simple. Yeah, so I see in the majority of the solutions this approach. It is a business process, but it's a process that is simple. Yeah, and that allows us then to build the solutions that we need. Now, there are still quite some other aspects, and I will point out something. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the processes are not always that simple, yeah, or the functionality that we may require may make it a little bit more difficult. Let me give you a little bit of an example. Yeah, I have seen scenarios whereby, and I hope we're all familiar with this idea of the four-corner model, meaning an initiating party is instantiating an exchange. And when the initiating party does that, meaning has transmitted the exchange to the receiving party, yeah, comes to the conclusion it was a mistake. And as such, we can immediately say, oh, it was a mistake. Let's cancel it. Let's do it again. Yeah. So cancellation would practically speaking mean a new business message is transmitted to the other side. Now, the question is a little bit, will that work? And it depends, I have to be honest. Yeah, it depends, because it could very well be that the original message may not yet have been processed by the receiving party. Let's not forget, this is all asynchronous. You never know. You hope that it goes almost in real time, but you have no certainty. Yeah, so in theory, there is a chance that you say, well, hold on a second. The cancellation message, it might be processed by the receiving party before the original request is even being handled. That would be a bit strange. You know, you try to cancel something, you refer to what you would like to cancel, but what you refer to has not even been arrived or has not yet arrived. So this creates a little bit of a problem. Yeah, and you can deal in various ways with these problems. Yeah, we can ensure that messages are always sequentially being handled. or you can deal with it as part of the business process. Yeah. Would it not be better to say you can only cancel a message as an initiator if you have a confirmation that the receiving party actually received the message? In which case it means you're initiating a message, you're sending it to the receiving party. The receiving party acknowledges that it has received it. And at that moment, the initiating party knows we can eventually follow up with it with a cancellation because the receiving party has received it. Now, immediately the business process becomes more complicated. Yeah, so whether we like it or not, in the end, we always start talking in the context of a solution about what is the process that we would need to support to make this exchange of information possible. Next slide, please. If you look at that process, the question is a little bit, where do you build that process? Because it's complicated. In the type A of solution, you're saying, listen, I have the initiating party, its solution. I have the receiving party with its solution. I ask the initiating and receiving party to handle that process. Many of the projects, certainly the initial project said, let's do that. We give the authorities and maybe the receiving authority the responsibility to, in their system, implement the necessary support for that process. This is nice. I think we have seen doing that, but it also has a big disadvantage. And the disadvantage in this scenario is that you trust any of the connecting parties that they all correctly implement the process. You have no central control over the implementation of the process, meaning that, as the picture states, in corner 1, you can correctly implement the process, but the corner 4 can completely mess it up. So although it can work, I can tell you the type A approach requires an awful lot of testing. Testing to ensure that connecting parties have correctly implemented the process. In the second scenario, we choose a scenario where we kind of try to centralize the process. You see in the corner 2, corner 3, which would typically be an eDelivery compliant implementation, you also see another block. A block that has implemented the process. Yeah, so that would be a solution where that central process block would be centrally provided for, meaning that the entire community would receive the same building block with that process, somehow closely deployed to the eDelivery implementation, could even be part of it. Let's not debate that here. Now, that's a different approach, which has the benefit that processes, their implementation are centrally, or it's possible to centrally provide them, which means that you have far less problems when it comes down to compatibility testing, because you may assume that the central solution has been tested up front. Now, it looks nice, but it also has some complications. It's not as easy as it is. So you will see that this is first one of the things where every project needs to clarify what is it that we want? What are the set of business processes that from a solution perspective we would like to support? Now, given the time, I have one more slide that lists other areas that are typically coming back. What is your deployment model? Is it a point-to-point? Is it hub-spoke, kind of star network, where you do the exchange? It's the first question that you have to clarify. There is the address book. I refer to it as an address book. Other people call it a service directory. If you're exchanging information with another party, what kind of services can you actually invoke from that other party? Yeah, we have this SML, SMP type of solution there that can help. What about versioning of your messages and release management? Yeah, you have an exchange of data. Well, let me tell you, that is somehow a definition. It may evolve. Yeah, can you expect that on the Friday afternoon, your entire community deploys a new solution? Or do you have a different strategy for how you want to deal with this? Security, certificates, a key issue here. I see very often that people ask, why do we need that? It is secure. No, it's HTTPS. Everything is fine. It's not only for encryption over the network. When we're exchanging a piece of information, Yeah, typically this becomes a kind of a message or a document. And in the document or in the metadata, we are telling who is the sender of that information. So let me practically speaking say, listen, we're sending a message and we put in there that the sender is Fred. And then I very often see that people say, well, that is good because the receiver now knows it comes from Fred. Well, that's a bit simplistic, yeah, because the document itself is just text. Anyone else could send the same document and put the name Fred as the sender, yeah? So we need something more sophisticated that really gives us the confidence that the sender of the message is really the one that has sent it. Welcome to the area of certificates. Yeah? Defining messages, we need ontologies, we need standards in there. I've seen that there's someone else from the once only principle. Yeah, don't ask information multiple times. Yeah, there are concepts that we would like to support. Timestamp, something comes to the table. I already put there that the message exchange is asynchronous. Some people would not like it. They want to ensure a certain order in which things are happening. Testing strategy, it's a big other debate. How are you going to test the solution? How do you ensure that any party connected correctly implements the protocols and the processes as you have defined them? How are you going to monitor things? eIDAS, yeah, it's a whole debate. How do you use compliant eIDAS compliant certificates? And if you need additional information in such certificates, such as an IORI number, how do you link it to that concept? Finally, last point, yeah, we're rolling out an eDelivery solution. And what I see over and over again is that every commission initiative or maybe national initiative, they build up this whole eDelivery network. It's very expensive. Why not considering to use that eDelivery network that is put in place for different initiatives? You can easily send messages, payloads, content, documents from different initiatives over the same eDelivery channel. Should not be a problem. But it means that you need standards to somehow agree on how can we distinguish one message from another. So it's a whole bunch of messages or of topics that you should take into account when starting to think about an eDelivery solution. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I move right away to our next speaker, Pim van der Eyck. He is going to present to us the once only technical system next.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, I can start talking already to give a bit of a context. So the once only technical system is a system that's developed in the context of the so-called single digital gateway regulation. And that's one of the regulations that's part of the European single market policy domain. So it's the DG GROW is the directorate, which is the business owner of this system. So what is the purpose of this regulation? The purpose of this regulation is to support businesses and citizens performing administrative procedures. So this could be a student registering at another university in another member state, or a person retiring in another member state after he finishes his or her working life, or it's a business that starts a business activity in another member state. So there's a range of domains and procedures in a cross-border context where the OOTS system wants to support the citizen or the business that's executing that procedure. So the SDG regulation has a wider scope. The OOTS is specifically aimed at what is called evidences. So in many of these procedures, the user needs to submit so-called evidence, which could be a document or a data to prove a particular requirement for the procedure. So it may be your ownership proof for the vehicle that you want to take with you as you move from, for example, if you start to live in another member state and you want to take your vehicle with you, you need to prove that this is your vehicle. If you want to register maybe your vehicle for an emission sticker, maybe you need to prove certain technical properties of this vehicle. If you want to register for a study, you may need to show your diploma that shows that you have met the qualification criteria, etc. So there's lots of data that is required to be submitted in the context of those procedures. And the once only principle, it was already mentioned by Vincent, is the idea that a lot of that data is already in the hands of competent authorities. But it may not be the competent authority that needs it in the context of this procedure, but there's another competent authority that already has it. Sometimes it's the one that created that document, or sometimes it's the one that holds the data that the citizen or the business previously submitted to that other competent authority. So what the once only technical system is about enabling the user while executing a procedure to basically step out and retrieve that evidence from the other competent authority, which in the case of OOTS, it's a cross-border system, is another member state, preview it and prove that it's used in the other procedure. So essentially, this is the problem that we are solving. It's a cross-domain system, since it supports a number of domains such as education, vehicles, and a number of business procedures. So it's a potentially very large system. There could be, in principle, thousands of competent authorities across Europe that are in scope of this system. So it's also a highly decentralized architecture. So many different competent authorities are involved, and yeah, the exchange involves all of them. So on the next slide, a bit of a high-level overview of the architecture of the system. I won't go into the details, but essentially it's a mix of a message-based exchange, so data being transported by computer systems over computer networks, and an interactive user-based system. So we actually use two building blocks. We use eDelivery and we also use eIDAS for electronic authentication. And what we also provide quite a few other additional services and components that support this. But in essence, if you look at the sort of the line from left to right, what's called the procedure portal on the left to the evidence provider on the right, there we use eDelivery as. So this is a diagram that's essentially the diagram that you see 20 versions of in this webinar. So there we use eDelivery. So the process is in essence a very generic process. So we have requests that being transmitted from the left-hand side, the party on the left-hand side of this diagram, to the party on the right-hand side. And we have a response which contains the evidence, if an evidence exists and has been made available, or potentially an error message if some other situations occur. So in essence, it's a very generic process, and it fits eDelivery very well, as we'll explain on the next slide. So this is really a webinar focused on the rationale for using eDelivery. Why are we using it? So there's a couple of reasons. As you know, eDelivery is something that has been under development for well over a decade. So initially, it was done in projects by member states, and since a number of years, it's now the building block offering of the Commission. So a lot of investments has been made, a lot of work has spent into optimizing the solution, making it more fit for purpose. So as a project, as OOTS project, we have a massive amount of work, But here, just using eDelivery is a major saver, time saver for us. It exists. It does essentially out of the box what we need for this document exchange functionality. So in that sense, it gives us a head start in delivering our solution. Also, yeah, if you look at best practices, so the way our system is set up, it's not an open network. It's only competent authorities. So the data is not exchanged outside of this network of the connected competent authorities. So it is a structure, like a network, that's very similar to many other eDelivery systems that are currently using eDelivery. So we basically yeah, can reuse this model that has been proven successful in many other projects. Also, yeah, as a result of the amount of time and effort that has been spent on it, today eDelivery is a very stable, mature solution. So we know it works. We know it works in many domains, and we know it also is used successfully in very large-scale production applications. So it's not an experimental technology. It's not something that may work in only one domain, but yeah, which cannot easily be transferred to other domains. Yeah, that is a reason why we have the confidence that we will be able to use eDelivery also for once only. More specifically on functionality levels, we use eDelivery also for its security features, and it's not just to protect the confidentiality. We also use its so-called non-repudiation features. So we can use the network of eDelivery access points and the logging that they generate, also to prove that messages have been sent by particular senders or have been received by the other parties. We have the signed data structures that we can use to actually show that particular content and not other content was sent. And since these are out-of-the-box features of eDelivery, we save an enormous amount of investment that otherwise would have had to be provided by custom solutions and custom protocols in the system. And since this system has so many entities, that would have been an extremely expensive and complex effort. Also, eDelivery is very flexible, as was mentioned. In essence, it transports payloads. It has no opinion about what those payloads are. It has a rich header structure, so we can also send metadata with that payload, for example, to express what kind of service the payload relates to, or other properties of that payload. So we can easily customize it to the requirements in our project. So we use a range of other standards and formats in our project, and we can easily fit eDelivery to use that model. And finally, yeah, even though people say, okay, eDelivery is a standard, is specification, in reality, it's a lot more. So it's you see this diagram. There's this support office. There's the SMO service. There's a sample implementation, but there's also a network of implementers that share experience, that share use cases. There's a wide user community around it that's actively using it. So that's actually a major benefit as well. As an example, in our project, we have had lots of questions about security and how we use eDelivery in the architecture. So there is a document called the eDelivery controls, security controls document, which was written years ago by security experts. And nowadays, when we get questions, we can just point to those documents, right? So we don't have to get our own consultants or experts to justify that eDelivery is fit for purpose. We can instead point to a lot of existing documentation, which is not the eDelivery specification itself, but is a document about and supporting the eDelivery specification. So again, that in our project where we work with member state experts to define the system is a major time saver. So yeah, that is more or less what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you very much, Pim, for presenting the use of eDelivery in one Sony technical system. We are very quickly moving to our colleague from DG Santé, Natalia Zilinska-Puta, who will be speaking to us about the in the making HealthData at EU system, both with very many organizations working on it, both inside and outside the DG Santé. So Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bogdan, and good afternoon to all. If I could move to the next slide. And the next one. So indeed, today as a team leader in DG Santé, I have a pleasure to present you a bit the HealthData at EU, so the system which we're building now in DG Santé, but also as you can see from this little pictures which I put here, as you can imagine, the health infrastructure, especially this one, we are talking here about the infrastructure for the secondary use of data. So for the reuse of our all data or statistical data or national health funds data for further research and for the improvement of medicines or the medical procedures and whatever in the of our surrounding to help us get better treatment. It's something which is actually involving all member states, all data holders, which are the hospitals and all the organization and each of the level, because on our health, there is a lot of environmental points which make a difference. So it's also social things or even connected to the weather. So will be presenting a bit of the high level, not even architecture, but the connection between the central platform, of course, as a commission member. So we always have this perspective, but as you can see, we are there in the central, and our role as a body who proposed the regulation on the European health data space, and is also the coordination between all the member states and encouraging them to adopt the regulation first of all, and then make the data available as soon as possible. So we are targeting all the member states, but also all the European institutions which are in the possession of the relevant data, so like ECDC or European Medicine Agency. Also, the regulation is open to the third countries if they are in the possession of the relevant data, and the health-related research infrastructures. So the group of experts which are already for years working on the specific domains, and they are in the possession of health data. So we try to connect all of them to enable this reuse of the data. The reuse itself, of course, will be taking place in something which we are calling secure processing environment, SPE, and this is technically speaking something like big data platform with different analytical functions. But as you can imagine, not everyone will have an access to this data. This also, me and you, we would not like it, even to the process data and pseudonymized, but there is only a group of people who will have an access to them. And first of all, we need to focus on making sure that the correct people will have an access to correct data. And therefore, we are now working on the central platform where if the researchers or other governmental bodies would like to use the health data for the secondary use of data from the different countries, they would make the application to use the data through the central platform, and then this application will be dispatched to the countries whom will provide those data for their decision if the data could be granted to those people. And this is exactly where we will be using the eDelivery. This dots, you see the lines, dotted lines connecting the different types of nodes, also with the central platform, but maybe in the future also between each other, because from the Commission side, we do not go into regulating the behavior of the national contact points and themselves between the countries. They need to exchange the number of data, metadata, or different messages to make it all happen. And as you can see on the right side now, there is the example how the exchange of the data will look like. Now we are talking about the metadata for the central platform, so to make the request if the data can be used. And this is based on the metadata catalogs provided by the member states. And you see that for this transport layer between the central services and all the national contact points, so the technical systems in all the different nodes, we will be using the eDelivery network. The next slide, please. Why we are doing this? I was actually, I felt inspired by the colleagues who were speaking before me, and I put a bit of raw facts, you know, what our platform will do, but this you can indeed read, you know, it's a transport layer, and that's obvious. We receive the messages, we send the messages, they are encrypted, so this is a plus. However, to be honest, sometimes we will be sending the messages which do not really need the encryption, but also we will be sending the messages which include the personal data which need the encryption. At this stage, when we are now in this place of discussing the regulation in the Council and in the European Parliament, and also we are in the place where we already work with member states on building their solution, it's very important to show that this concept is tangible and it can happen. It's very important for us that we can really build the infrastructure which is already connecting to each other, which is exchanging the messages, as Bogdan before said. At this stage, we do not really look into what is inside the message, because this is the hardest part of our project, this semantic discussions about the format and about the data and the standard use for data exchange. This is something which I'm certain will take months, maybe years to be agreed between expert and then by all the countries, and then released as part of the specification in the implementing decision. And because of this, the whole concept may look unachievable. But however, we from the beginning, we said we will be using the solution which are already available, which are components known to us, which we know that they work. And with eDelivery, we are working already for years for primary use of data for exchanging prescription and patient summaries. And we know that all types of data can be transported. So whatever afterwards member states will decide to exchange through this mechanism, which will be already in place as part of the infrastructure, they would be able to do it. If they will decide to exchange the health data inside, it's possible. Metadata, it's impossible. It's possible. The formula or the information between one country to another country, if the permit should be granted, it's possible. And the infrastructure is there actually, because we already put it in place to test with some of the member states. It's there and it proves that the concept works, that it's feasible. And now it's only actually about adding the use casing, showing who can use it for which benefit, and it's very tangible. And I think this is something which is winning in our case, that as other colleagues said, it's a well-organized help desk. It's a very well-described technical solution. Now I can even tell you that while recruiting the technical team, we are putting in our requirements that we would like that they have a knowledge on eDelivery solution, AS4 implementation and standards. So it's very beneficial that there is one mechanism which easily proves on the technical level that this can be done. And now, step by step, we are adding the next blocks, which take us closer and closer to this exchange of health data. And I think with that, I will finish, and I will encourage you to use this solution if you are in the similar situation to ours, because I can see it works. Thank you.
And thank you, Natalia, for your testimonial. And we hope, of course, to continue our collaboration and make the data space thrive. With this, we move on to the use case from, well, the upcoming use case, I should say, from DG Move, where eDelivery is being considered for use in the FT exchange environment. And we have my colleague, Leah, who will be taking the floor. Leah, please.
Indeed. Thank you, Bogdan. Yes, we are a upcoming project that is based on a EU regulation that aims at facilitating the exchange of information between the economic operators and the authorities, with a view to allow the first to actually prove compliance with EU rules that apply to the transport of goods, actually not just EU rules, but also the national rules that apply in the member states. I hope you see well my screen. You see the...
Yes, it's perfect.
Very good. So the regulation is has been adopted. It's already in place since in force since August 2020. However, it will start applying only as of August 2024, and actually some important provisions of it will only start applying once the Commission adopts some of the first implementing and delegated acts that will provide the specification for the implementation of the regulation. As you hear, this regulation and the information exchange environment that we set up shares some similarities with the projects that you have heard, but actually it's also quite different. So what is interesting is that we all find eDelivery as a very valuable building block for more or less the same reasons, as I will explain a bit later. But first, so what does this regulation aim to achieve is to promote the digital transformation of the transport and logistics sector. And in particular, we're looking at, as I said, facilitate the proof of compliance with applicable rules in an electronic format. We expect that this will reduce the administrative costs for the operators, but also enhance the efficiency of the rule enforcement. And we're trying to do so by ensuring that the authorities will accept the information presented electronically so that they can trust it, but they will not use different requirements depending on the member states or a competent authority to check the different information, that they actually will set up different requirements for what constitutes an acceptable format for the electronic information, but what they can trust or not. And we're also trying with this regulation to ensure that the different IT systems and solutions that are used within this exchange environment, both by the authorities and by the operators, will be interoperable. What we're doing with basically just is that we facilitate proof of compliance with the rules. The rules are already in place. The information that needs to be provided is already there in existing EU and national legislation, and we're just providing a exchange environment that will allow operators and authorities to exchange the same information now electronically in a simpler way. So we'll provide the requirements for the systems to be used by the authorities to be able to check this information electronically, as well as the requirements for the service providers, and the platform that will be used for the exchange of information with the authorities as well. So we also require a certification that will also play an important role in our view, and also in the choice for the delivery. Finally, what it should be remembered is that for the time being, the economic operators will have the option to use this environment, so they could still present information on paper, but if they will go electronic, they will have to comply with the requirements that we are establishing in these regulations, mainly that they will need to use platform or service providers that are certified to comply with the specifications that we are currently preparing and will hopefully adopt soon. Now, in practice, how is it is very much should be as easy as on paper, but even faster and more reliable. That is, the data is filled in a system of the respective economic operators. Then instead of being printed, it will be electronically transmitted to the carriers, which can still add data or modify depending on, for example, when take over or deliver notification. So that can always be done electronically. Now it's done on paper, and then in case they are controlled, they should be able to present to the authorities only a QR code in principle that the authorities should be able to read and have in the background their applications that are set up by the respective authorities to decode this QR code and be able to retrieve the information from that from the system where it was initially recorded. That system needs to be what I mentioned earlier, certified to comply, and this is here represented by these blue dots. That they can be part of systems of the operators or other IT system IT service providers, but they need to be certified to comply with the regulation. So it should be as easy as that for the users. However, in the background, and that's the system that or the IT architecture that we're now trying to finalize the specifications for, is much more complex. And in order to allow that any carrier carrying any goods from any point within the EU to another point in the EU, or even going outside of the EU borders, are able to prove compliance electronically in any of the EU member states in the same way, we will need to have a highly interoperable system. We could have gone for a centralized system, but that was rather costly and complicated. And so we opted for a decentralized way of exchange of information, where we have some sort of European level that is formed of what you see here, a network of national gates for the exchange of information that mediates actually the exchange between the authorities in certain member states on the one hand, and the economic operators that are using one of the FT platforms on the other hand. So in principle, an eFTI platform or service provider should be connected to only on one gate, and the competent authorities and the officers are also connected to one gate. And then the request for access to information and then the information to be transmitted back is mediated then via the network of the gate, based on the information in the unique identification link that tells which is the gate which the platform that keeps the data is connected, and then where and then again also the information is to be sent back. So where we want to use eDelivery is basically when the requests and then the answers are sent in between the FT gates, but also in between the platforms and the gates, because for reasons that I have already explained, the security, we need a secure exchange of data, and this is an important feature of the eDelivery. But I'll go to my slide with the explanations why, indeed, the more detail. You've heard these arguments before. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and also we wanted to save time, because we will have, as you could see, quite a number of parties involved, several different competent authorities in all the member states. Then we would have also quite a high number, we expect, of eFTI platforms, given that the operators would have the freedom to use either their own systems if they're certified, or whichever providers that will also seek for certification. So trying to find a technical solution, an agreement on the message exchange standard would have proven probably lengthy, complex, and we all know, those that have worked with experts in the IT world, that there are many different preferences. So finding a solution that makes everybody happy, it's close to impossible. So this is already there. It's tested. You've heard before. It's very well detailed, and that's why we also opted that it's something that will very much serve our purposes with very little effort. We also think that member states that have already some experience with it, that will also help, therefore, with the reusing eDelivery for the purposes of the FTI regulation. It's right now we cannot reuse any other networks that in place, but we can leverage the experience that member states may have already gained in other domains. Also, the fact that we already have compliance software solutions out there will also facilitate implementation. And of course, the fact that as there are more and more solutions using the delivery that can only benefit everybody exchanging practices, understanding how it works, how to make best use of it. It's also something that should also benefit our own users, or rather, the stakeholders in the future eFTI exchange environment. Finally, this has also been mentioned before. There are already support services in place, explanations, so we don't need to provide that ourselves. If we had come with a custom-made solution, then we would have had to not only maintain it and make sure that in the future it's updated, but also just to keep on explaining how it works, what is it good, also help with troubleshooting during operation or before during implementation. That would have also been very costly, and eDelivery and the great team of our colleagues in Digit can actually help us to avoid that. Finally, one last word on extension, because the eFTI exchange environment currently focuses not only on information related to the goods that are being transported. So we are not looking at, for example, compliance with rules that apply to drivers or to vehicles, like driver certificates or certificates of conformity for the different means of transport that are being used. But in the future, it might also cover that, and depending on whether also eDelivery will be taken over in the future, also for maybe those types of documents to be exchanged electronically, then we could connect much faster the current FTI exchange environment in its current scope with these other systems, to allow the authorities to have an integrated interface to quickly get all the data that they need when they're performing checks, and also obviously to also facilitate the life of the operators. They don't have to carry that many papers and certificates on board, but they could also be just available electronically at a click. That was it for me. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Liam. I will now invite Carlos Gonzalez Ruiz from TAXUD. I would say by now a user of eDelivery that has been with us for some years now. So Carlos, please feel free to share your experience.
So hello, good afternoon. My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I work in TAXUD as a system architect. I have been involved in several projects, but these two that are related to eDelivery, I was involved in them on defining the architecture, or responsible for their architecture. And I just wanted to go through very specifically how eDelivery is using these systems and what were the reasons why we use eDelivery for the systems. Let's go directly for the first slide, which actually specifies which are the key reasons for use of eDelivery in these projects, or if you want AS4 also. So first is that's an open standard, AS4, and being an ISO standard, that's a fundamental element if you want to set up interfaces. But on top of that, it's not just AS4 being a standard, also the fact that eDelivery is a very concrete, more concrete and more focused implementation or application of that standard, which makes things easier. So you don't have to go on the wideness of AS4 in order to implement. So that's really an advantage of eDelivery as such. Of course, one important point of this is the confidentiality of data, which allowing the support the transport and message level encryption. In our projects, we only use the transport encryption, and that's another good point here of eDelivery, is that you can in some way choose how far you need to go and how to apply into the complexity of your system of your implementation according to your needs. The next important point is at the aspect of integrity, because you can use digital signature or sealing that we use in our case, that is more kind of for legal persons, and actually it is a very helpful aspect that we use in our system. Indeed, the next one is non-repudiation. That's a fundamental one, because in our case, we want to make sure that whoever sent a message or received a message cannot contest the fact that that message was sent or received, and that goes in both directions. Finally, and maybe also very importantly on the technical implementation, is the flexibility and versatility on exchange mechanism. You can decide to go on a push or pull mechanism. Of course, that always will depend on the implementation you are using, on the product that you are using that implements the eDelivery specifications. But usually in our case, it's very important to be capable of having that flexibility. Payload compression is an important element, split and join also if you have very large messages that you want to be able to send from one system to another. Sorry, I'm going that fast, but that's, I'm afraid that the time is very limited, and I hope in the questions we can go further. So this is a very, very limited view of the implementation in ICS2 of the AS4 or eDelivery implementation. And I think that exemplifies how it works. As has been mentioned before, very, very nicely, actually, you can set up the infrastructure or the communication channel through which you can implement your own exchange mechanism at the business level. And that's actually a very, very useful element. As you can see here in the case of ICS2, we have a central access point, the AS4 at TAXUD, and actually we call it TAPAS, a TAXUD access point for AS4. And yes, we can implement that on top. And then every economic operator that wants to participate or needs to participate into the ICS2 system, they implement in their own access point. They use a diversity of implementations, but they all based on having a standard. And again, coming back to the importance of the standard, we can always communicate. Of course, we have on top of that our own specifications that are implemented in the services that I mentioned there. Those services relate to the operations, to the business aspect, the business content that is exchanged. Next slide, please. Another information about the use of eDelivery, of at least our implementation of eDelivery at TAXUD for ICS2 is kind of the volumetrics. ICS2 exchanges a huge volume of messages. It's all about all the consignments that are imported into the European Union are managed through ICS2. And as you can see here, we are having the last month, we had about 82.7 million during the month of August. We have got days, for example, we have up to 6 million messages exchanges. Here we are talking about business exchanges only, not the signal messages, only business exchanges, but in both directions. So the notifications towards member states and also the message received from not member states, so the economic operators and vice versa. And in total, since the system entered into operation in March 2021, we have exchanged more than 2 billion messages, business messages. And in fact, one important advantage to mention is that indeed we have not had any major operational issue with this system since then. Next slide, please. So, and coming back, I think that's an important point here, and coming to the aspect that you have with eDelivery or one implementation of eDelivery and a communication channel or an infrastructure to exchange in several systems. We will implement also the use of AS4 or eDelivery for the CESOP project that is not related to customs but to taxation. And actually it's a very different exchange that we require here. It's not anymore with economic operators but with member states. And the difference of these two systems, so which is the versatility of eDelivery. And here you can see on the left, especially as most important, which are the key differences of the two systems. Is the type of exchanges is between authorities or with private sector or economic operators. The message size and frequency, they are completely opposite. CESOP has low frequency of messages every 3 months, but very, very large messages, while ICS2, as you've seen before, is sending millions of messages every day and small messages in this case. So they are very kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum of exchanges. And actually in both cases, eDelivery is a very good implementation for both of them. And then another important element is that an ISIS2, we can have any an economic operator needed to join because it's open to the whole world. Any importer that may need to bring goods into the union, so that the number of participants is continuously increasing, continuously changing. While in CESOP we have a fixed set of customs authorities that are the ones that are not sorry taxation authorities in this case that need to change the data. Of course, there are also similarities that always there are between several systems, but the versatility is shown in this case. So this is it from me. Thank you very much. I am sorry that we went so fast and so briefly. I just wanted to give the highlights on why eDelivery for DigiTaxUD has been so important in these projects. And definitely I can say that it was a very, very good decision made on this moment. So thank you very much, and I pass back to you, Bogdan.
Thank you, Carlos. And indeed, the fact that you had to go so fast is our fault. We will make sure to give testimonials more time the next time around. We are learning as we go on our end, and certainly this is one of the lessons from today's webinar. In any case, I'm very happy that that we managed to get through the first 6 testimonials, and now I would invite my colleague Christoph Georgiev, also from Digit, to provide the perspective from a service provider this time, a service provider of eDelivery Access Point as a service to a number of projects that are using it in the Commission. Not the ones you've heard from today, but indeed some other 10 or 50. Christoph, the floor is yours.
In the meantime, then, thank you very much, Bogdan. Good afternoon, everyone. As Bogdan said, my name is Christoph Georgiev, and I'm responsible for the USEND service in Digit. Let me see if the slides come up. Yes, okay. And today I will share a few thoughts very briefly from a service provider's perspective on the value of eDelivery. We can go to the next slide. Yes, these are the managed services provided by our unit, and beside using this as a shameless plug to advertise our EU-type services that we provide either inside the Commission or in an interinstitutional context, I would like to just highlight how we ended up creating some of these services and how EUSend was also created. So these services are basically trying to resolve or solve certain basic digital capabilities and provide them as a service to DGs and who are building IT systems and trying to use these digital basic capabilities without having to reinvent the wheel. And we can go to the next slide. Yes, so some of those services were built on the so-called building blocks, which you already heard of, but some of them were developed and maintained by the Digital Europe program, previously by the CEF Telecom program or CEF Digital program. And in Digit, we were maintaining some of those building blocks on behalf of DG Connect. And our unit or our management saw the let's say business opportunity to create professional managed services around some of those and to offer them to DGs who are of course looking to solve these very basic capabilities like authentication, electronic signature, or secure message exchange. So we created these services like the EU login on eID, you sign on e-signature, and you send on the eDelivery building block, with providing hosting service levels and dedicated operations around them. So that's how EUSend was born, and we can go to EUSend. Since I'm managing the service, just very briefly, so we are a secure exchange service within the Commission. We provide multiple components as a service to cover multiple use cases to cater for user-to-user, system-to-system, or system-to-user exchange. And one of those is basically eDelivery as a service. We provide an access point and operate an access point as a shared service inside the Commission to Commission DGs. And now finally we can go to the slide, which is probably the why Bogdan invited me, and not the advertising our unit services. But yeah, I see the greatest value for projects basically in the commission, that by using a service provider, in this case EUSend in the commission, but we can draw the parallel to also we heard our colleague from the EP recently, they created a similar managed service, so that these projects can basically outsource the operation and maintenance of an eDelivery access point and all the complexities that come with that. They can concentrate on their core business to achieve their policy objectives, and basically focus on maintaining their business application, the business workflows, and how the message is transported. This is already set by the eDelivery specification. And this does not have to be an issue. Basically, they just need to plug in their application to our existing access point and be part of the network which they want to exchange messages through. The other thing is by outsourcing this to a service provider, you get shorter time to market. Of course, you reuse an already existing infrastructure and the expertise within the operations team and the technical teams behind that. And the service provider takes care of basically the security, the hosting, the operations, the compliance, configuration management, and the evolution of the service. So these parts should not be underestimated if a project goes embarks on using eDelivery. So these projects do not waste resources on that, but as I said, they can focus on their core business and also on creating basically responsible for the entire application and only outsourcing for us the message exchange part. We can go to the final slide, and I hope I'm still within time. This is another message what I brought. I think it could be a value to potential service providers or service providers on the market. I think eDelivery can present a business opportunity to the commercial IT service providers out there. Although EUSend is not, we are not participating on the market, so I don't have an experience. But I can only say that similarly to how we provide this service to commission DGs, providing this type of service to the SMEs or the public administration authorities who have to use eDelivery when doing regulatory reporting with the EC projects. I think that's definitely something that can be considered, taking into account that there is an uptake in eDelivery within the institutions. So just from our clients, we have clients in the health, transport, energy, and justice sector, for example, which of course they prompt on the other side also the need of establishing and operating access points, either in the private or the public sector. The same benefits also apply to those users in the member states that apply to the projects which are using EUSend. And although we are a non-commercial service provider, but from our experience is that those projects which we use EUSend, they are very happy to outsource this capability and not to deal with the complexity that comes with operating such a network. And yeah, we have even, I think we have a couple of projects that previously used EUSend or operated on their own, and they decided to migrate to use the corporate service once it was available. Yeah, the last thing, yes, indeed, for service providers, they can choose from a wide variety of compliance solutions already available on the market, so you don't have to build a new solution based on your preference on technologies or capabilities that you need to provide. You can choose many available solutions on the market, so yourself also will not be in a vendor lock-in situation. So that was from me, these two angles what I wanted to highlight, and in case there are PMs from the commission are interested in knowing more about EUSend and eDelivery, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
And thank you, Christoph. Also, I am very happy to see that even though we ran a bit over time, we still have many of you still with us. So even though we are over time, of course, we are still here for a few minutes, and we invite any of you who do not have a hard stop. Well, the hard stop was already potentially at 4 o'clock. But if you are still here, we are very happy to open the floor to some questions. We would be privileging questions about either the presented testimonials or the business aspects having to do with the delivery, rather than getting into the technical ones. As we mentioned, this is a non-technical webinar. So with that in mind, I will be giving you a couple of minutes to raise your hand to see if you would like to ask any questions. Normally, I see that the questions we have in the chat were already answered. I apologize if I missed one. If so, please feel free to raise your hand and ask it again, and or otherwise to ask a question to either our team or the panelists that have been presenting the testimonials. I think I don't see anybody wanting to take the floor. So perhaps then we will just stay with a very brief question if one or two of the panelists would like to address it, which is what, in your opinion, makes an eDelivery implementation a success or a failure? So let's say if from your experience you also had some negative aspects that you noticed, or on the contrary, if your experience is such that you see what is the key element that everybody should have in mind when considering building using an eDelivery building block.
Well, if I may, on the implementation, the hardest point and the one that you have to be most careful with on the implementation is, as you are going to implement, I think that was mentioned in the second presentation today of the panelists, and is the aspect of the certificates. You're going to use sealing, or you're going to use a signature, electronic signature. The management of those certificates and how it's going to be worked out is an important element to consider very carefully before the implementation. It's not necessarily a difficult thing, but it has to be properly understood before you enter into the implementation. It could be a pain point. That's my main input on that.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Indeed, dealing with certificates and thinking well about how to organize the security and the certificates that ensure that security is a very important aspect.
Okay, just very briefly to jump in on this topic, as we are reusing the sample implementation. I don't have experience on the market, but for us as a service provider, I think it's very important to find a vendor who gives you a good vendor support and you have a good collaboration with them, because there might be a lot of things coming up, and you need to try to to react to those issues, and how the vendor reacts to them and tries to resolve them. That's very important when your system is in operation.
Okay, thank you very much, Christoph. While maybe waiting from one or the other of the panelists to consider if they want to come in on this point, I will quickly go to a question from the chat. Which eDelivery implementations use the C2, C3, AS4 integration for both business to business and business administration data sharing? I think the immediate example that comes to mind is PEPL, the implementation of exchange of e-invoices at the moment, but I would be much happier if we had here somebody from PEPL, because our knowledge is relatively limited. I think at the moment the PEPL network is set up mainly for business to administration. However, there are ongoing developments in which PEPL is collaborating with other organizations that would like to extend the use of e-invoicing also to business scenarios. In particular, one of them is ISPA, if my memory serves, which exactly is trying to bring the business to business angle to the PEPL network. And from the information I heard in one of their conferences, the same network will eventually be used for both interactions. At the same time, I think it's not necessarily sure. I'm not necessarily sure, but I think in the business registers interconnection system, some of the actors are public and some of the actors are private. So the business registers are private organizations in some member states and public organizations in others. And I think the system allows for the use of eDelivery between both registers that are private and registers that are public. So these are two examples that come to mind right away. But I think there might be additional ones if we look at the individual projects. Yes, we will consider publishing the chat. We don't typically do that, but this is indeed a valid request. Okay, seeing the time and seeing at the moment there is no other hand raised, I will move slowly to close the webinar. I hope you have managed to find something useful in today's testimonials and presentations. Certainly we will be putting the recording online as well if you want to share it with your colleagues or in any case with others that were not here today. And thank you for your participation into the poll. We always welcome your feedback also on the webinar itself. You will have a link that you are going to be moved to once you leave the webinar, and please spend 2 minutes to fill out the survey. This helps us a lot with the future preparation that we have to do. So thank you again, everybody. Have a nice end of the afternoon and see you for our next webinar. Goodbye.